Well, as all of us know, ministry is full of distractions. Many of them are external. People want to meet with us or something needs to be fixed. But also many of them are internal. We haven't scheduled our time well, and so the day seems to get away from us. And so today on Practical Church Planting, we are going to give you 7 simple ways to overcome distractions in ministry.
Thanks for joining us again today on Practical Church Planting. Today we're going to be giving you 7 simple ways to overcome distractions in ministry.
And today's episode is brought to you by none other than the Growing Your Launch Team course.
That's right.
If you're in the launch phase of your church and you want an actual, actionable, workable plan, not just raise money or meet with people, practicalplanting.com/launch. Get the Growing Your Launch Team course. We've got a lot of great reviews about it. It's been really helpful for a lot of people. So if that's you, practicalplanting.com/launch. Get the Growing Your Launch Team course today.
Get it today.
Now, overcome distractions. So we all know in ministry, you plan your week out. We talk about focus, productivity a lot. So this is kind of like that. But the question is, what happens? How do you not get frustrated, angry when things don't go the way that you want them to go? Or how do you ensure that your week has some sort of rhythm to it so that's not all over the place, and checking emails and phone calls and meeting with people? How do you get the stuff done you want to get done and then also not get frustrated when things don't go the way that you want?
It's a good
What we're
question.
talking about all the distractions that can happen in life. Sometimes they're external, we can't control it. Sometimes they're internal because we haven't done what we need to do to make sure we are staying on topic and on task.
Yep.
So here we go.
It's controlling it as much as you possibly can.
Number one, this one is not a new one, but the reason how it's going to help you against distractions, I'll explain in a second. So we would encourage you to calendar out your day ahead of time. Use what I call the modified block calendar. So it's like I've got a couple of things that I do every week, so they're on the same place. And then at the end of the day, the end of the workday, so Sunday afternoon through Wednesday, Thursday, whatever. The next day, I go and fill whatever holes I have in my calendar. So if I'm not meeting with anybody, whatever, so that day, I know exactly what I'm doing. So that helps you with the focus side of things, so that you're not wondering what I should do next. You know how long it should take you to do each thing. Big fan of that. Now, here's how this helps you when you get distracted. So, for example, last week, this happened twice. I got something happen last Wednesday. 2 things happened that were unplanned. And one of the ways that allowed me to not be so frustrated about it was because I knew, okay, I can move my stuff around so that I know when I'm still going to do it and when it's going to get done. So if you have someone who wants to meet with you or a phone call or something that happens the way that wasn't kind of planned in your day, you can get really frustrated. Or if you didn't plan your day at all, it's kind of like, well, now when am I going to do these things? And so it was really helpful for me to know in those moments that, it's not a big deal. I know exactly when I was going to do what I was going to do. So now I'm just going to move those calendar blocks to the next day or to another time so I know that they're still going to be taken care of instead of wondering, I don't know what I was actually going to do. And now I don't know when I'm going to do everything tomorrow because my schedule got thrown off. And so all I to say, calendaring your day ahead of time allows you, when you are distracted or when something comes maybe outside of your control, the stress of like, I don't know when I'm going to get this stuff done is really easy because then you just adjust your calendar and move things around accordingly.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of it seems a little bit weird to say sometimes, but especially if you're in church planting, especially if you're raising support, and like most of our salaries are based off of other people. I think it's fair to say. And so I've always felt like we have sort of a moral obligation to be at least semi-effective with our time, to waste as little time as possible. Not to say like you have to be working 24/7 or that every minute you're at work you have to be going crazy and doing everything possible. But in the time that I'm planning to be working, I think that kind of have an obligation to the people that are funding what I do for a living to be using that time wisely. And part of that is making sure that you've planned out your day and that you're actually using your time effectively. And so I think this really helps whether you're part-time or full-time in 2 different ways. I think if you're part-time, if you're bivocational or something like that, obviously your time is much more limited, so you can only get a certain amount of things done. And so this helps you kind of determine what those things are and how to get them done in an effective way. But at the same time, if you're full-time, and especially if it's early on and maybe whether no one wants to admit it, but there are going to be times where, especially in the beginning, and if you have more high-capacity volunteers, you may not have 40 hours worth of stuff to do every week, which is true and which can happen.
And I would say some people are like, that's not possible. I would say a lot of times it's because you're not productive with your day. We have different episodes about that. If you check your email all day and then you assume you got a lot going on, if you check social media for 2 hours a day, then you're like, well, yeah, I'm working more than 40 hours, but you're not actually working. You're doing these things that are distracting you from actually working.
Exactly. And so if you have a lot more time, then this can help you obviously determine what to do in those times. So you're not having these times where you feel like you're working, but you're not actually accomplishing anything. Or you don't have these kind of lulls where you're deciding what should I work on next, which I mean, I think we all know kind of turns into just wasted time. And so I think doing this really helps you stay focused, and it kind of helps with that. In my mind, I don't know whether it's true or not, but this kind of moral obligation, I call it, to work effectively.
Yeah. So for this episode, we're not just talking about you need to calendar your day to get more done, but we're also talking about if you get distracted. Here's one of the pros of doing that is that you can just move things around so you know when you're going to get things done instead of the whole time being anxious of, well, here's what I was going to do today, and now I don't know when I'm going to do it.
Yep.
So calendar your day so that you can easily move things around. That will help you manage distractions and when things come up that were unexpected. Number 2, pick a primary place for scheduling. So we've got Facebook messengers and Instagram or Twitter if you use that, or text or email or whatever other platform you might find yourself on. There's so many different ways that people can connect with you or you can talk to people that it can get really confusing to know where's your primary means of communication. Maybe that's another way to put it. So for me, I'll get a Facebook message or a text message or whatever, someone wants to talk or wants to meet, and I always tell them email.
Yeah.
Now, if they were the one that reached out to me, the onus is not on me to email them. Like I want to meet with them, right? But I say, hey, can you email me? Here's my email. And then if they don't follow up, it's like, it's not I don't know. It's not my fault. But if it's in a text or a Facebook message or whatever, I'm going to forget because I don't like schedule stuff through that. I primarily use my email. If I have something on my calendar, it's just because normally it's on my computer. It's easier than my phone. That's how I found it. And I'm not saying I say find whatever is best for you, particularly if you're somebody who, like if you're like the lead pastor, if you meet with people pretty consistently, you need to find a place where people are primarily communicating with you so that you're not like letting things fall through the cracks. So we mentioned other episodes too. I use Calendly. Email's a lot easier too. I just copy my Calendly link in that and they can click on it. But if somebody like wants to do something, whether it's formal or informal, whatever, I'll just say, hey, can you email me? That way I know it's going to be taken care of. It's going to be stayed on top of. And so one of the ways we get distracted is that we have all these inboxes all over the place and we haven't kind of said, here's the primary place where I'm going to kind of run my schedule. And so that can be very helpful.
Yeah. So, and I think you'd agree, have a primary place that you're going to run, like email. I would agree. That's the same thing with me. But you don't expect people to always remember that. In other words, you have to tell someone to email you if you need them to email you, even if you've told them before. Like, in other words, and my thought process is the onus is always on you until you tell someone otherwise.
Yeah.
In which case, yes, if you tell someone email me and they don't, then I mean, I hate to be like, well, it's on them, but in some capacity, you have to have some, you have to be realistic at some point that if you ask someone to contact you and they don't, then they probably didn't need whatever their need, but if you don't ever tell them, or if you just expect people to know, then it is on you that you didn't communicate it. So have a place, a primary place that you want to, people to communicate with you through, but make sure you're communicating that well to other people and not just expecting people to know that.
And 2 things with that. Yes, of course, there are exceptions. So especially if it's like a good friend and they want to get lunch or whatever, I'm not going to say, okay, email me. Like I'm just going to, although it's not ideal for me, it's like the text back and forth. Like I'll just do that. So there are exceptions. And also this is so that you can like be healthy in the long term. So this is not like, I know not everybody likes using email, but that is what I have chosen to use. And so if you really want to connect, we're going to use email.
Yeah.
Again, if it's someone who like literally never uses it, there can be exceptions. But part of this is, and we'll talk about this as a little bit later on, is that you got to be healthy for the long term. And if you're always in a million different directions and catering to all the different people, that's not going to be good for you. So this isn't about being selfish and doing what's best for you because it's best for you. It's about long-term sustainability to help people as best you can. And ministries, the cliche, marathon, not a sprint, blah, blah, blah. But it can act like a sprint. Like if you're on all these devices and all of these places, you've got to find, and again, if people forget, so remind them, but having a primary place where you're scheduling stuff through will help you avoid like, did I follow up with this person? People falling through the cracks. Again, for me, if I tell them to email me and they don't email me, I don't feel bad about it because it's like I have responded, I didn't ignore you.
Yeah.
But that's just, it's the best way for me to be healthy and not to go crazy with the various requests that you can get. So.
And part of it, like you're saying, is there's these. I think these are good, like helpful guidelines, but there's not like a hard and fast rule. In other words, if someone, I mean, obviously, there's always extremes in different things that are exceptions, and obviously, you don't make rules based on exceptions. But we're not saying like if someone's coming to you and is, literally dealing with something serious and they forget to email you back, that you should just, forget about it. Like,
right.
or for instance, like my father-in-law, I don't even think he has an email. If he says like, hey, you want to get lunch, I'm not going to be like,
right.
please email me, because I know he doesn't even have that capacity.
Yeah.
But you don't want, but like you're saying, you can't just, like if someone's contacting you through Instagram, they have the ability to email you,
Yep.
and so
Right.
and so it's not like you need to just service every single platform and just do whatever anybody needs, but obviously have some understanding, and it's not like just because you said, please email me, then you have the license to just completely forget about it until they do,
That's a good point. So there are definitely exceptions that we should make. So again, because we're in ministry, we can't just be about productivity and focus.
Right.
Like absolutely, if you know someone in your congregation does not email, but you can't make exceptions for everybody. And what can happen, what I felt the tension, so like example of Instagram and Facebook, I'm like, well, it's just one person. But then it just becomes a thing, and it kind of it also trains them for the future. So I always tell someone if they Facebook message me, even some of you through Practical Church Planning Facebook message me, I say, hey, even if it's a simple question, I'm always just like, can you have to email me this, and then here's my email.
Yep.
Because I want to, for future reference for people at our church to know this is where it is. But also you want to make an exception, but then it's just going to be a problem.
Yeah.
You're going to forget. And so in the moment, you might be like, well, it's just this one time. But I just promise you, just get in the habit of saying, here's the best way to connect with me so that you can ensure that people aren't like falling through the cracks in the future.
Yep.
So that's a good way to overcome distractions. Find one primary place for scheduling. Number 3. This is helpful, but then we forget. But then it's just good to remember that it's good to anticipate interruptions will happen. So that does happen. And I say that because sometimes we can complain about how our week was thrown off. And I get it's okay to be honest about frustrations. So, sometimes I kind of rag on like pastor gatherings and everyone's complaining about how busy they are. And like it is okay to have a healthy place where you can just be like, this stinks.
Yeah.
But you don't want to you don't want to get to the place where you're just always frustrated about stuff you can't control. And so why I say this is, well, I would say 2 things. Number 1, I would say that interruptions don't happen as much as we think that they do. So it can easily be like, well, it's just always going to happen, so I shouldn't schedule my day because it's always going to be thrown off. I don't think it happens, and maybe this is just anecdotal experience. Well, it is. Like it's not like you're getting interrupted every single day all the time. And so I think we need to anticipate that and not plan our lives around the 5% that happens instead of the 95% that happens. And so it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. And one of the, if not, in my opinion, the biggest reason that we get frustrated about anything is because we have unmet expectations. So we think things are going to go a certain way, and they don't go a certain way, then it frustrates us. So we think our day is going to go a certain way, or we think, when we spend time with our spouse in the evening, we have this idea of what we want to do, but we didn't communicate it, and they have another idea of what they want to do, and you're kind of like bummed because in your mind, you had already assumed this is going to happen. Stuff like that. Unmet expectations. And so have the expectation of knowing that things might not go the way that I want. I have gone to this a lot. To remember, as a ministry, like people come first, and so we've got to remind ourselves of that. But knowing, hey, if something happens where my schedule doesn't go the way that I want, it's okay. Having the first point, having my days calendared helps a lot because I know I can just move things around. But do anticipate them. So we would still say schedule your day because it's better, because you're not going to get interrupted every day. You're just not, unless you do things in a not healthy way. But you won't get interrupted every day, and so plan like you're not going to, but then anticipate that it will happen so that your frustration won't be as high when it does.
So this is one of the times, or one of the ways that like not procrastinating really comes into play.
Yep.
And like we talk about this, it's not a point on here, but we talk a lot about how, especially if you're someone who preaches every week, getting ahead in sermon prep, because God forbid if something catastrophic happened and you had to it kind of derailed your whole week, you're not going to be like neglecting your family on the weekend to get a sermon written for Sunday. Because we're far enough out that there's generally not something that, if everything goes terribly wrong, which is obviously a one in a million kind of thing, not like a weekly thing, but if something just derails everything you had planned, the majority of the time we're trying not to, any of us as staff, to be in a position where that's going to negatively affect a bunch of other things, you know, where we're far enough ahead in things and not haven't procrastinated too much that we can't walk away from something to help someone who's in dire need. Not talking about just like a random text, but like someone who actually like really needs something.
Yeah.
But if you're kind of doing everything last minute, if you're prepping only for that following Sunday, you are a little bit, you kind of have to decide if people or work come first, because at the end of the day, there does have to be a message on Sunday. And if your entire week is derailed because something, you know, outside of your control, but something like catastrophic happened, well, then you got to make decisions on if you're going to address that, if you're going to give up the time that you would potentially spend with your family. Something's got to give somewhere. But if you're wise with your time in the times where there are no distractions or shouldn't be distractions, then you can get enough ahead to where when something, the 1 million or 1 in 1,000, whatever, these big things happen, you can deal with them. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a distraction that throws everything off.
Yep. So it doesn't mean that you necessarily like it and look forward to it, but anticipating that they're going to happen, again, planning your schedule also makes it less stressful because if you're ahead on things, you're not last minute. But then also you can move things around. And so just knowing this might not go my week might not go the way that I want helps you when it doesn't go the way that you want.
And one thing I found is the more important things, so to speak, or the things that need more focus, I mean, you do, maybe for different reasons, but I generally do in the morning because, I mean, that's the easiest time for me to like have clarity of mind and things like that. But also, I've just found most of the time when people contact me with things, it's rarely in the morning. I mean, that's just anecdotal. That's not like going to happen across the board. But like generally, if someone wants to get together or if someone has an issue, I mean, maybe it's because I wake up early and other people don't. But I generally get messages later in the day if I get any. And so later in the day is the things for me that are a little bit less important or things that can be moved around. And so if you kind of have seen that pattern, not saying that'll happen for everybody, but if you've seen that, then maybe you can also plan around a little bit of, I'm less likely to get interruptions at this time, so this is the time where I'm going to do the things that need less interruptions.
I'm going to start scheduling emails to you, Brian, at 5:30 to send at 5:30 in the morning.
Well, emails are never important, so that doesn't bother me.
Trained, yes,
but
I like that.
Texts or phone calls are a different story.
I can't schedule texts yet, but I'm going to start scheduling texts to go to Brian at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
I'll use our text in church
from
New City Church. Yeah. So anticipate that'll happen. It'll just help the frustration when it does happen. Number 4 is to have a weekly scheduled rhythm. So again, we talk about this when it comes to productivity, but it really helps this, especially with smaller churches or church plants. We talk about this a lot, but it's a thing that when I talk to church planters or pastors, it's just hard to do, is to schedule certain things to happen all the time on the week, and you just don't generally change them. Now, there can be rare exceptions, and they need to be rare, but sermon prep, same time every week, put on the calendar. Or if there's other things that cause, cognitive focus and you're more focused in the morning, whatever in the morning that might be, or if you've got stuff that are really important that needs to be done well, like have those things the same time every time, and don't just be like, I'll meet with anybody, I'll do with anything when everybody wants it, because again, you need to be healthy for the long term, and going from place to place, to thing and having no rhythm is going to really hamper you getting stuff done in a manner that you want to get done. I think it's part of the reason why pastors, particularly church planters, feel like they work 60 hours a week is because they're just open to whatever anybody wants, whenever anyone wants. I got to check my email a lot, the text a lot, social media a lot, instead of having planned times of when you're going to do that. So then you get distracted. And so again, there are the things that you do every week. It would be ideal to have a weekly thing in your calendar that's already blocked off of, here's what I'm doing it on this day. So that'll help you overcome distractions, because then you can get, when distractions do come up, again, it's kind of like the first point, you've kind of managed when they're going to happen. So, an email, for example, or a text that when you might take a few seconds to read, but it's really your mental space is going to be there for the next hour because it was maybe bad news, whatever. Well, if you're not checking your email all day, or you're not checking your phone during these dedicated times, you can't get distracted. So scheduling weekly practices of when you're doing certain things and you're not going to do other things will help you not get distracted, because you can't get distracted if you don't allow yourself to be distracted.
One of my favorite / in reality, least favorite things that I see like people post in like church groups and stuff like that. I'm trying to think of how it's phrased, but essentially like, what's your like joking way of like, what's your job description? And pastors are like, this and I'm a maintenance worker, I'm a plumber, and like all these things, because like ministry is, you do everything. Yeah. Which I get there's truth to it, but I'm not a fan of like acting like ministry is the hardest job on the planet. Yeah. Emotionally, I think you can make the argument that, yes, but it's just, I don't know. There's a lot of things, but we act like no other job. You also have to do a lot of things in. So one of the things that I think helps is having like weekly things you do every week, because there are things that like you do prep a sermon every week potentially, if that's what you're in, or there are things that you do every week, and I don't think we always have to just act like we always have to be like running and putting out fires everywhere.
Yeah.
Because I just don't think that that's the case for the majority of people. Maybe it is for you, but for the majority. And so have plans of like, this is the time I'm going to do this thing. And even if that feels a little, I don't know, unspiritual or less exciting than running around and doing everything, that's just the way it is. And so I think having those times where you're scheduled to just do this thing and it's every single week is, I don't know, really going to help you not be distracted or be less productive.
Yeah, I think not having a weekly plan or a daily plan makes your life seem a lot more hectic than it actually is, because you don't really have a plan of when you're going to do what.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just when things come to mind. And of course, if we're just going based off when things come to mind, well, things come to mind all the time. So are we moving from thing to thing, not getting things done as quickly because we just do them halfway at this point and then halfway here, and then we get distracted or we don't feel like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So we just don't do it. And so again, having a weekly schedule rhythm helps you with the distractions, because you know when things are going to get done so that you can focus more when you're doing those things. And then when distractions do come or interruptions do come, they're a little bit more manageable. So again, if you're on your device all day, you're going to get distracted a lot more than, hey, I'm not going to check it right now, and I'll check it in a couple hours. So,
and part of this is also scheduling things that are not weekly. Like obviously there's things that are going to come up that you have to do that you don't necessarily do every week, but there's times in the day for that. And so you can schedule that, whether that's scheduling every week for like a block of like, I think what you do is like block out like working on your task list, right, at a certain time or day or whatever.
Yeah.
Or if you have something along those lines, like for example, a couple weeks ago, I felt kind of bad after the fact. I didn't really think about it till after, but it kind of came across kind of disingenuous. I was hanging out with somebody, and they were newer to the church, and they were asking me like, "What do you do at the church?" And that day, coincidentally, the last thing I did in the day before I went to hang out with them was I fixed a broken urinal. And so I kind of, just because that was on my mind, I was like, well, today I fixed a urinal, and like it was a joke, whatever. It wasn't anything. But afterwards, I kind of thought about like, I don't want to come across like I just do what, like I'm fine with, I don't care if people think I do whatever, but like I don't want to come across as if it's just there's no structure to my job and to just kind of do things as they come up and whatever, And so, but I think we can have that mindset sometimes of we just kind of do things as they come up, and we're always kind of like, I had an old job that my buddy made this observation, and I don't know, it always stuck with me, of like having a job where like if you've ever worked on like a flooded basement, have you ever had a flooded basement?
Never had a basement.
You don't have basements
North
here.
Carolina, we don't have basements.
Okay, so I've had a flooded basement before, and it stinks. But like if there's water coming in and you have like a big floor squeegee, and trying to like get rid of water, like pushing water away here, and water's always coming in somewhere else, and like you're always kind
flooded
of
church. We had a flooded church.
Or flooded church. There you go. But he made the observation at this old job of like always feel like there's always like a flood coming in. I'm always like working on somewhere else, and then something else is coming in. And I feel like we can do that with church sometimes, where like we feel like we're always running here than running here, and nothing's ever getting done. But I think that's more on us than on what the actual job is, and more on not managing what we're doing.
So I'm not saying this is the best way. This is just what I have found that's worked for me, which is why I call a modified block calendar. So there's a few things every week that are just always there. But of course, we know a lot of stuff can be random. And so again, and there's times in my calendar that are, when I use Calendly, that I leave open intentionally every week so that people can choose those times. So what happens again, so today's recording this on a Monday afternoon, no, Tuesday. Tuesday when my workday is done, what I'll do is I will look at the next day's calendar. And so Wednesday until noon is sermon study every week. And then the rest of Wednesday is pretty much open. So I will, if there's nothing already scheduled because I'm meeting with somebody, whatever, I'll look at my task list for the next day. If they're a larger task, so if a task is going to take at least 30 minutes, then I'll actually put it on my thing. If it's going to take less than, that comes too minute. So I'll have like an hour for tasks. And I've trained myself, because again, when you don't tell yourself what you have to do, you always kind of go to the thing that is the least hard or least resistance. So I've trained myself, like if I've got an hour block for a lot of small tasks, which I do typically once a day, I'll have a little task thing at some point in my day. I'll say whatever order they're on my task list, I have to do it that order. So I'm not allowed to do the easier thing on the bottom. I've just got to do it. Nice. And so again, that way the day before, because things can come up, I always have openings every single day. The day before I'll fill it up, because the chance of somebody, if it's 4:30 on the afternoon, if I'm going to meet with someone tomorrow, I'm already going to know about it. So it stays open, so my Calendly is available, and then I just fill it in the day before. That's up. So anyway, weekly schedule rhythms will help you overcome distractions. Number 5, changing your phone habits. So we just talked about this a little bit.
It's good advice for anybody.
Is changing phone habits. Now, at the end of the day, you want to check your phone less. The best way to do that is to change your notifications. So I'm not saying it's the best. What I have kind of settled on is I only get notified if you call me. I'll get like it'll ring or vibrate, and it will have a little red icon or whatever. Unless put on Do Not Disturb, then it won't. But other than that, that's the only notification I get. So if you text me, I won't know. Well, then text, my phone doesn't go off at all. If I open my phone, I'll see the little red icon that I have a text. But like it won't show me on the home screen.
Yeah.
It won't vibrate because it helps me distract. And that's it. Email's not on my phone, which it's fine if it's on your phone. But if it is on your phone, I would take all the notifications off, even the little red dot, because we can't not see a red dot and not click it.
Yeah.
Or if your phone vibrates, you can't not check it. Like even if you know somebody's going to text you with some random information at a certain time that you don't have to check right away, like even if you know what it is, you still have to check it, which distracts you. And so changing your phone habits is a big thing. Taking notifications off. Like for me, like on Wednesday morning, for example, there's a couch in my office. I'll put on Do Not Disturb. So if you call me, I won't even know other than my wife. So if you call me twice, it'll come through. But I'm kind of, if there's an emergency and somebody can't get me, they'll probably call her and she'll call me or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's also on the couch. So it's not like on my desk where I can just, when I have a moment of, I don't want to do this right now, I can't even look at it.
Yeah.
So changing your phone habits, starting with reducing the notifications. Again, you can't be distracted if you don't invite them into your life. And if you take them off your phone, you're inviting them less.
Even if you don't go as far as taking text off, but I can't think of another notification that is worth having on your phone. Like that is helpful. Like sure, you can make like text, obviously, if you're talking to people, you can make the argument that you want to keep that. But like Facebook notifications, like social media, email. I forgot people got email notifications. That'd be a nightmare. But like I can't think of any other, maybe people disagree, but that you can make an argument that it's a good thing to have that notification on your phone. You know, I mean, even if you're someone like you manage our social media, but even if you're someone who manages our social media, I don't think there's anything that would really ever come up that you need to know right away. You know what I'm saying? And so getting rid of these notifications is, sure, it's good for productivity and helping overcome distractions, but I think it's just healthy for life.
Well, it's funny too, because again, you could be like, well, what if you do a typo on social media, right? And so that could be a worst case scenario, which then means you got to check all the time. I think it's okay to live with that. So there are times where in our
Sure.
group me, or somebody will literally text me and say, hey, there's a typo on this, and I'll go and fix it. And it's like, I'm okay with it being a couple hours, and I'm okay with living with a potential unideal scenario for just not going crazy.
Yeah, if the worst thing that happens is you have a typo, life goes on. Like,
Yeah.
But I mean, it's good for this, but it's good for like your home life and your everything life, just to get rid of every notification you can that you can live without.
And it's hard, because we just put up pressure on ourselves, and it's kind of this cultural expectation that you got to respond right away, like a text message. But who says you have to respond right away? So I think it's kind of nice to train somebody. Like if I'm checking my phone, but just because you text me, sometimes you don't get a response for a couple hours, especially if it's you can't, at least on iPhone, once you read a message, it's the little notification thing, like in the app is gone. And if somebody texts me and you can see the beginning and maybe it's about scheduling or something like that, and I'm not in a place where I can deal with it, I won't even open it until I can. And so it'll just sit there. And if you reach out to me, I know you will be followed up with. It's okay, but as long as it may not be within 5 minutes, but that day you will get a response from me. I think it's okay to also train your people that, hey, he's not going to respond right away. They will survive, you will survive. But changing your phone habits will not only just your own distraction, like bring it on yourself because you're doing something and you have a moment of, I want to take a break, and so you on your phone and you take way longer on your phone, or you get distracted. Or again, people text you about stuff, which is fine, but who says you have to respond within 5 minutes? Changing your phone habits.
And it'll help with, meeting, like I think we've all had this experience. I don't know that it even needs to be said, but when you're talking with someone or meeting with someone and they're constantly checking their phone
it's the
or
worst.
checking their
worst.
their whatever it's called, Apple Watch, or whatever, and it's just like, what are we doing? And it's like, clearly you don't want to. Well, this may be a little extreme, but it's like, it feels like clearly you don't want to be here. There's other things going on, but we've all experienced that, but we all don't want to think it's us doing it, which we've all had times where it's us. I have, like everyone has. And so getting rid of as much as possible off your phone. I mean, even like going as far as, if you need to, getting rid of apps off your phone. If the notification doesn't help,
email,
like email, or like, if you want to get rid of social media, I won't argue with you. Yep. You have a computer. Everything can be accessed by computer. But like, just as much as you can. Like I don't know. Maybe it's just me turning into an old man. But the older I get, like the more I just, yeah, I recognize other people. I mean, obviously, we all recognize other people doing things more than we recognize ourselves doing it. But like, I recognize it more in other people, and it just brings to light more and more how much people recognize it in me, and it just, I don't know, it doesn't make me happy with life, and so get rid of it as much as possible. Nothing important is, other than like communicating with people, nothing is important that has to be on your phone that you have to be checking all the time.
So pro tip, never ever have your phone out when you're meeting with somebody.
Oh,
they
yeah, for
they even
sure.
have the studies of like, even if you're not checking it, having it out. And I've even read talking about there's even a difference between having it out upside down and having it out
Yeah,
facing up.
yeah, I've seen
But
that.
regardless, people, it just communicates. I'm spending time with you, but if something more important happens, I'm going to check it.
Yeah.
So don't have it. And if you get a phone call, don't check your phone.
Mhm.
Like the nice thing with the Apple Watch is I can do like the sneaky check sometimes.
Yeah.
But again, I don't. The only reason I would do it is if my wife called me more than once, and if there's a problem, she's going to call me twice. Like if there's an emergency, and so like just resist the urge to pull it out. Just, I mean, it doesn't. It comes across as you're not as important because I like being with you, but something else comes up. Just don't have your phone out.
And one thing that's, and we can get off the topic because this is totally off topic, but like one thing that I've done and I think helps is like, for example, I was getting lunch with someone about a month ago, and at the same time we were dealing with something with one of our kids, and I was waiting for a message, so I just told him when we sat down. I mean, it'd be different if if it was like my first time meeting him, but I just told him, I was like, just so you know, we're dealing with this right now, so I may get a text or a phone call that I gotta take real quick, and then I'll be right back to it. But like that way, I didn't want him just thinking like if I get a thing and I look at my phone that I'm ignoring him. But there's something I can't get out of the fact that I gotta deal with this right now. So kind of like couch it a little bit. But if you're doing that every time you meet with somebody, then that's a different story. Then you're obviously not prioritizing the person you're meeting with. So
Change phone habits.
change your phone habits.
Number 6. I think this is really crucial to understand, and this will change a lot of things for you, is to know that availability does not equal faithfulness. That's really a lot of what we're talking about here. Is we just have this assumption that anytime anyone wants to meet, whenever they want to meet, regardless if it's good for me or not, I'm going to do it because that's the faithful and right thing to do. That's just not happen. That's just not. I mean, even if not to like do the Jesus juke, but Jesus didn't do that. Like he went away and prayed and did things where it was inconvenient for other people who wanted him to do something else at the time. But he did the more important thing. And so with all of these different ways people can contact you and not having a scheduled calendar at all and being super flexible, that does not mean you're being faithful. Like if you preach regularly, doing sermon prep on Friday and Saturday night, I don't like to use generalities, but I would generally say that's not faithful. Now, if you're bivocational, there's a difference. But generally speaking, and you know if it's true or not, if you're in a unique situation, obviously you know you're in a unique situation, so that's fine. But for most people, especially if you're full-time or close to full-time, doing sermon is not faithful. It's not going to be as good as it could be. And so that's just one example. There's a lot, but availability, doing whatever people want you to do, whenever they want you to do them, is not good. It's not good for your church. It's not good for your family. If you're married, it's not good for your marriage. If you have kids, it's not good for your relationship with your kids because it trains your kids that their ministry is more important than they are, because if somebody needs help, sorry kids, I'm going to go help them all the time. Now, of course, there are exceptions, but there should be exceptions, not the rule. Just remembering that availability does not equal faithfulness. If we would understand and believe that, again, there is exceptions. We are ministry, so it's not always about focus and productivity. That's not, but faithfulness, we would argue, focus and productivity is a part of faithfulness. People are paying your salary. They are giving of their income, very generously in some cases, for you to do what you do, and to not take that seriously, and to just not have a good rhythm of getting things done and being healthy yourself, we would argue is unfaithful. So availability does not equal faithfulness.
Yeah, and I don't know that I've ever had the case where someone got mad or upset with me that I couldn't meet on their time frame. You know, like obviously I've had people like ask if I get together at this time or talk during this time, and as long as you don't say like flat out no, but give another response like no, but I'm available at this time. I've never had anyone get mad. I've never had anyone get frustrated. And that's just the way, I mean, obviously, like, I think we all want to jump to like worst case scenarios and try and build rules around those. And like, obviously, if someone passes away, it's okay to drop everything to help. You know, but I mean, obviously, we're not building our life around those exceptions. But for the majority of the time, anytime anyone, even like for something serious, if I've gotten a message or a call saying, "Hey, can you talk?" and I say, "Hey, can you talk at 1?" or whatever time frame, I've never had anyone scoff or be mad or whatever, and people understand that things are going on. I don't know. To me, and this may be me just reading too much into it, but like if I was contacting someone like a pastor, and anytime I contacted, they're constantly always available, that's nice, I guess,
Yep.
for me. But eventually I would start thinking like, do you do anything? Because like if anytime I contact you, you're always free as a bird, nothing going on.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute, I thought it seems like important work that you should be doing. But I think as long as you're not coming across like you're blowing someone off, as long as you're not coming across with like there's no other, either you meet at this one specific time or nothing.
Yep.
If you're giving options or using something like Calendly where there's different options available, people understand. People know that you are human as well. So I think we put too much pressure on ourselves that we have to give everything when in reality most people don't expect that of us.
And again, part of this is because we don't want to come across as we don't care, so we get that.
Mhm.
But people, like I mentioned with this Calendly earlier this year that I finally started using it, and I don't know why I waited. But part of it
Yeah.
was I didn't want people to think that I thought I was too important or that they weren't valuable. It's like, well, pick a time on my calendar. Nobody thinks that.
Mhm.
Like we put this expectation on ourselves, and it's kind of the opposite. It's like, especially for how I don't do it the best way, but for me, there's a lot of time on my calendar.
Mhm.
Because for me, again, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, I leave open on purpose, and
Yeah.
then the day before I fill them up. That if you want to meet with me, you're going to find, unless I'm going out of town or it's a particularly full week, likely that week or within 7 days, if you need to meet soon, you will have a time to do it. And so nobody's upset about that. They get you've got stuff going on. People just want to be responded to. And it's okay if it takes a week or two. Knowing the fact that it's on the calendar and it's going to happen is better than not responding for 3 days and trying to figure something out.
Yeah.
And so availability doesn't equal faithfulness. Responding is faithful,
Yep.
but it doesn't have to be that day. And so really believing that will help you maybe even some of the internal stuff that's stopping you from doing some of these things to do them.
Yeah.
So, and then last but not least, seventh simple way to overcome distractions in your ministry is to schedule daily uninterrupted time, which we've talked about here a little bit. For both of us, it's in the morning. Brian's morning definitely starts earlier than me. But so there's a couple hours a day where I do the same things every week, or I'm not available for other people, or it's because I'm most mentally focused. So that means sermon study or going over sermons or writing a community group leader guide or the newsletter thing that I do, like stuff that requires a lot of focus, or, we do this in the mornings because I want it to be good. Like, those are the times that are uninterrupted for distractions. Because I was listening to Cal Newport. He talks about productivity and focus. Maybe uninterrupted time is not the best way to phrase it, because sometimes focused work does involve other people. So it's not always by yourself. Like if there's something you need to collaborate on or whatever, that's not to say you shouldn't do that when you're at your most focused time, but you should schedule it and know here's what we're doing, and not just make it some thing that you're winging. But if there's anything, whether it's individual or with a group of people, that requires focus and mental just being there and not being tired, we would say schedule that and have a couple of hours every day of that, so that you know that you're getting the most important things done when you're focused and when you're fresh.
I mean, I think we think we know this, but I don't know many people that actually do it. Like I've had times where just because of schedules and stuff, and mostly because of my own fault of not like scheduling well, but I've tried to like prep sermons in the afternoon or do something or do like most for me it's anything that's like involves like writing I struggle so hard in the afternoon, and I've done it now where I'm just sitting there and like I'm reading the same thing over and over again, and I'm writing. I'm like, what am I even doing? And I have such a hard time focusing on something that's like a screen. Especially like late in the afternoon. But I've had times where I've tried to do that and it just has never worked out well. So focus on, or like schedule the things that you need, that are going to be done at the time that you're the best at, at the time you're the best at. If that, you know what I'm saying, if that makes sense. And the other things can kind of filter in the other times. Like we have meetings in the afternoon generally, and like I'm not gonna lie, some of the times I'm like struggling to get through it, and I feel bad. Like I'm 100% not giving my 100% because of the time of day it's in. But that's just the time that we've decided that that's going to be the best. The other times of the day are free for doing the things that need to be done in that time. And so, kind of get to know yourself and what times you work the best at, and schedule your important, your uninterrupted, whatever, your creative stuff in that time.
Yep. So those are several simple ways to overcome distractions in ministry. Sometimes the distractions are external, but sometimes they're also internal.
Yep.
And so doing these things will help you when you face both internal and external distractions. So again, thanks for listening. If you're on the church planting journey and you're working towards launching, practicalplanting.com/launch. Also go to Facebook if you're not in our Facebook group, Practical Church Planting.
Yep.
And, if you happen to want to click that 5-star review so people can find this podcast easier,
No one will get mad at you.
no one will get mad at you. In fact, the opposite of mad.
That's right.
You might even get a gold crown jewel in your crown in heaven.
We'll get glad at you.
We'll get glad at you. So thanks for listening. We'll be with you next time on Practical Church Planting.